Hi, and welcome to Muhammad Bana's podcast. Today is the 16th of July, 2022, and I'm really excited today to have a guest all the way from Toronto, Canada, Nader Tohamy. Just a small background on Nader. I'm just going to give you the facts. Nader's big. He's huge on TikTok with over 60,000 followers, and he's big on Instagram with about 11,000 followers, and his forte is talking about halal stocks. So welcome, Nader.
Salam, Muhammad, and Jazakumullahu khairan for having me.
Wa alaikum assalam. I'm going to let you do a small intro for the listeners, and just a thumbs up. Our listeners out here in South Africa and the small viewership we have don't know. We got to talk in baby terms or bottom up, where they're not on your level and my level of understanding of cryptocurrencies. So we're doing this not for us, we're doing it for the listeners. But give us some background on your journey first, and how did you get to where you are? And then we'll take it into other topics.
Awesome. So I think my journey kind of started maybe 3 to 4 years ago. Like, even though I did graduate from business from McMaster University, I really didn't get started into investing until like fairly recently. So maybe 3 to 4 years ago. And that's, I guess, mostly because of the way that we grew up, and our parents would always tell us that, investing in the stock market is bad, and investments are bad, and you need to go to school and either become a doctor or an engineer, since I'm Egyptian. And, that would be the acceptable way of like making money, is going to university, getting a good job, and then profiting from that, right? And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that route. But when you're thinking about investing in general, you're missing out on generational wealth when you're talking about a long period of time of investing. So if you're investing for like 30, 40 years of your life and you're putting money aside, this will make a huge difference about when you can actually retire. So I was kind of awakened when I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I kind of put everything into perspective for me.
Yeah.
I identified my dad as 100% classic poor dad, right? So I mean, he's like, he went to university, he worked as an engineer, he worked for most of his life, and then we were fortunate here in Toronto. We opened a few like businesses. We had a halal meat shop. We were actually the first halal meat shop in the GTA, and we were pretty successful for over 25 years. And we opened a few restaurants and so on and so forth. But all of these jobs, or all of these businesses, they take up a lot of your time, right? So you're working 24/7, essentially, like, managing the business, physically being there, dealing with employees. It's not like the best experience, even though it can be very rewarding in terms of a monetary return. But you're literally like selling your life away just for, like buying your own job, kind of, essentially.
Yeah.
So when my father passed away and we sold the businesses, I ended up transitioning into real estate here in
How long ago was that? How many years ago was that?
So I started working as a real estate agent here in Toronto in 2017, right?
Okay.
So when once I like completed all the courses and I started working and I joined a brokerage, and I started to like get my feet like wet into real estate, I started to meet people who kind of opened up my eyes to the world of investing, right? Especially with real estate.
Other industries, you're meeting people from other industries, I'm sure.
Of course. Like, I mean, or you're just meeting people who just don't do anything except for just buying real estate, and then going and living in like the Bahamas for like 9 months out of the year, right? So
and collecting rent.
Exactly. Like, they look for opportunities like that, especially in 2018, 2019, when the interest rates were very low here in Canada, because of the way the economy was going. It was very advantageous, like, to start purchasing real estate. And up until like recently, like up until like maybe February of this year, if you had purchased a property in like say 2018, you would have made double the amount in equity in that like 5-year period, just because of how crazy the prices appreciated here in the Greater Toronto area.
That's on an average of about 20% appreciation a year.
Yeah, like, and in this year specifically, January and February, it went up 20% month over month, right? So it until they started the lowering the or increasing the rates, and the war in like Russia and Ukraine started raging on, and like the inflation numbers are what they were. And again, even Canada wasn't immune to what happened during the pandemic. So 70% of all Canadian dollars that were printed in history were printed in the last 2 years. So again, we're having the same problems that the US is having, except we might be in a better position because of the natural resources that Canada has, and like in gold and oil and water and lumber and all of that stuff that we have, and gold as well. So it's just going to take some time to start navigating through the process, which is why looking for alternative investments like stocks and cryptocurrency is probably best, especially if you have like a long-term perspective with regards to how you're going to how long you're going to be right? Like, so having an investment scope rather than throwing your money in and trying to double it like overnight, which most likely isn't going to happen. You're most likely to lose it overnight if you have this kind of mentality. But this is kind of like how it like all started. So after I got into real estate, I started opening up more into investing. After I read a few books, I started to start to research more about stocks, about cryptocurrency more like maybe just a couple of years ago, especially because there was a lot of issues with regards to its permissibility. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay and speak to some people with knowledge. And once I got those questions out of the way, I was learning more about blockchain technology, and learning more about the different projects that are out there and the potential that they might have. But I think one of the and again, you always learn whenever you have like huge losses, right? So the most recent lesson I learned was with Luna, with what happened with the algorithmic model that they have, like how it just kind of spiraled out of control. And I've never quite lost 90% of an investment in an hour just by watching what happened with Luna, right? But you live and you learn, and then you move on. And moving forward, it just gives you a better perspective of what you need to do with regards to your investments.
Yeah, your risk management and your diversification or your background research before you invest in anything.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, a lot of people, the reason why they do so well in real estate is because they go take a look at properties, they go check out the houses, they do inspections, they make sure that they're financially fit to purchase the properties. So while they hold these properties for 20, 30 years, they're making generational wealth just through their real estate. And if people took the same approach with investing, like into stocks or into crypto, then they would actually do a lot better in terms of their investing over the long run, as opposed to say, hey, I feel like buying Luna today. Let me just buy Luna and let me see if I can make double my return in a short period of time without really doing any research.
Do you think because it's so time consuming to purchase a property, and if you have to exit the investment, I mean, you can't just do it in a minute, okay? Whereas cryptocurrency, you can do it in a few seconds. You can make a purchase, and if you wake up 2 o'clock in the morning and you see the market crash dropping or the price dropping, it's happened to me. I'm going to be honest. More than a year ago, and when Bitcoin was dropping, and then you panic and you sell, and then a certain portion, and then 10 minutes later, you're like, oh shit, it's going back up. And then you want to buy back in, and you realize you bought the same amount of crypto at a higher price. You should have just not panicked.
And that's what people fail to understand. I feel like this is more to do with people's behavior as opposed to, their ease of the transaction, right? Like if you approach a certain transaction with the way of building knowledge about the type of investment that you're making, then regardless of the day-to-day like price action, like you should like kind of like see it as an opportunity to purchase, right? So while Bitcoin was dropping, you're like, great, if I loved it at like 5,000, I'm gonna love it even more at 3,000, right? So this is the difference between people who actually make money over a period of time as opposed to people who lose money. And again, like investing isn't for the faint of heart, right? Like you just kind of have to build some patience and kind of build a thicker skin, which is why it's important when you research your investments that you have a very good knowledge of what's going on. And if your investment thesis hasn't changed, or like the investing landscape hasn't changed, then you can react accordingly.
Okay. So I'm just making one or two notes here. You mentioned the term, you mentioned long term, and this is, I have a secondary business, another business called Global Institute of Wealth. Okay. And the aim of the business is purely to educate ultra high net worth individuals and family offices how to enter digital asset markets. So we're trying to bridge the gap between traditional assets and digital assets. And what I found is the first thing is we have to make people understand what time frame they need to look at. So you and I know that in Bitcoin, there's a 4-year cycle, and then the rest of the market follows this 4-year cycle, if I'm correct, right? I mean, if you agree with me. Now, I say that when people are investing into a property, if someone was buying a property from South Africa and they're investing in London or New York or Dubai, for that example, they're going to think long term. As you mentioned, generational wealth. So our slogan in that company is called preserving wealth for future generations. So you got to think in 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. And you got to give this investment a time, time to do its thing. Okay. Now you mentioned long term. I find a lot of the youth and people that are entering crypto don't have a long-term outlook. They want to make money quickly. What's your opinion on this? And what do you find in Canada? And
yeah, like I mean, in terms of my interactions with followers and people in general, like I mean, people are always looking to make a quick buck, right? And this is the problem these days, where people are just like, I'm gonna put money into crypto in the morning, and then by this evening it should be double, right? I mean, this is kind of the thing, and it's really dangerous because when people have the inkling that they make like some money, they get this like their greed factor kind of kicks in, and sometimes the ignorance starts to set in as well because you're blinded by the realities of things, so you end up making mistakes, and you end up seeing that something that may be an opportunity, or start taking investment advice from people who shouldn't be giving it out, or people who have a large platform and then they're paid by a certain project in order to promote them, and it ends up being a rug pull at the end of the day. So it's pretty sad, like when you see it. Like I mean, one of the things that I noticed over the last 6 months, and it's been going on for quite a while, is that there's a lot of scammers that are around impersonating people who are in the space, right?
100%.
So
I've been getting a lot of invites from people that I already know, like just say if it's Steven Levera, there's fake accounts. If it's Michael Taylor, there's fake accounts. It's crazy.
And for me, it's no different, right? And I feel bad for the people who actually fall victim to these scams just because they don't know any better, right? Like they feel like, oh, this person, I can trust him, but it's not really me. It's some guy in Nigeria or something like that, trying to scam people, get them to send Bitcoin. So, I mean, I try to be as proactive as possible to inform my my followers that these people you should avoid and block and report these accounts, because I would never like, ask you for sending me your money to invest. I wouldn't be giving you advice like that. I'm not a financial planner. So I just kind of provide information based on my own research. And it's not meant to, personally coach somebody or get them to invest in a platform, right? um, so this all kind of ties back into people's behavior again, like with what they believe is, something that's going to make them rich overnight. And this.
Okay, welcome back. Sorry about that. We had some internet connection disruption.
No problem.
Live in Africa, and this is what happens.
Well, as of last week, same thing happened in Canada, where Rogers pretty much shut down the entire country. So
yes, I heard ATMs were down.
Everything, even emergency services, right? I mean, that kind of brings you back to the problem it is when you have monopolies in a certain facet, especially for a country as large as Canada, where Rogers pretty much like owns like maybe 40% of the infrastructure in Canada, right? So it's only like two other major players between Rogers, Bell, and Telus, and they control like 99% of the media like in Canada, between cable TV and internet and cell phone service. So when one provider goes down, a huge part of the country is kind of left like in the dark, right?
That's crazy, huh? That's crazy. So, you know what? We were talking about a few things, and we mentioned about having a long-term objective, okay? And what I found is I meet a lot of youth, and they come up to me and they say, hey, Uncle Mo, we know you know a lot about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but I like to refer to it as digital assets. And I find that we need to have people educating themselves from the bottom up. And if you read the bullish case of Bitcoin, a simple 8-page document, they explain to you the history of money, and what is money and what is a strong money. And it helps you understand the blockchain and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and whatnot. Okay. But I want to hop onto you. You're very popular for giving your opinion on what stocks are halal and what is not acceptable. And I come across this from a lot of elderly people, and they say, oh, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin's not halal. Let's dive into that.
Sure.
Give our listeners some insight on your view.
Well, I mean, you have to remember that like cryptocurrencies and blockchain and whatnot, it's still a rather new technology. And with a lot of like scholars, when they dive into crypto, there's like one of four major opinions that they can take. Either that it's halal or it's haram, or it can only be used as like, say, spot trading in terms of currency, or they just abstain from giving an opinion until they decide to get more research, or it's completely out of their zone, right? So you have to take a look at who's giving the opinion, why they're giving the opinion, especially like, let's say if they're the head of an Islamic state, they like try to deter people from investing into these digital assets or holding these digital assets, since it will render their local currencies useless. Like, I mean, Egypt did the same thing with Al-Azhar. They made sure that Al-Azhar said that crypto is haram. But owning a dog is halal, right? So I mean, this is the problem with Al-Azhar, right? Same thing in the Emirates. Like they came out and they said that cryptocurrency is haram. Malaysia, like cryptocurrency is haram. Indonesia, cryptocurrency is haram. But again, like when it comes to Malaysia and Indonesia, I feel like they have scholars are a little more progressive, but they just still haven't fully encapsulated like the technology aspect, right?
Right.
Because again, whenever you take a look at anything, rather than just like forget about if it was crypto, if you like are putting in your money and you're hoping that something is going to go up magically like out of thin air, like this is like going to result in some sort of like gambling like behaviors, right? but that doesn't change the fact that the asset that's underlying may be permissible.
Yeah.
So a lot of scholars, what they do is that they'll mix this aspect and they'll tell you that crypto is gambling, or that crypto just makes the rich richer, which is not true at all, right? I mean, especially if you've been investing in crypto in the last year or so, like you've lost a lot of money one way or the other. So it all comes back to what is the cryptocurrency, and how can you decide whether it's halal or not. And
Right.
one of the opinions that I follow is the opinion of Mufti Faraz Adam, who's who's an amazing scholar when it comes to the finance space. He's also one of the advisors to the Amana Growth Fund, which is one of the largest Islamic funds setups from like a long time ago. I remember the Amana Growth Fund was around for like almost 30 years right now. And this was pretty much the only option if you wanted to invest halal, up until recently, where you had like advents of Wahid Invest and the like, right? Like for expanding different types of halal investments. And Mufti Faraz's opinion, as long as you can kind of correlate cryptocurrency to mal or wealth or money, then it should be permitted, right?
Right.
And when people tell you that you don't physically have possession of it, it's given a value by people. So I can literally go into a restaurant that sells shawarma and give him some Bitcoin, and I can exchange it for some shawarma, right? So actually there is restaurants here that accept Bitcoin, right? So right now it's turned into a digital currency. So at least the spot trading aspect is permitted. But when you're holding projects for long-term investment, you kind of have to see what the purpose of these investments are, or the purpose of these platforms. And once you determine that it's a halal purpose, then you can take a look at like the details below it, like the tokenomics behind the platform. So if there's any fee redistributions, or if there's any swaps, then these are not permitted, right? So you want to avoid platforms that have like these kind of tokenomics inside it, because these are like more like riba, right? So you get money on top of money with no risk or effort. And this is one of the bigger issues. Again, and then when you take a look at other facets like staking, staking can be permitted as long as you're putting the money into into a personal wallet, and you're staking it so that you're your own node at the end of the day, and you're being rewarded for securing the blockchain, then this is permitted as well, because there is risk and effort is evident. But if you're putting it like on a central exchange so that they can give you money on top of the pool that they like lend out your coins for leverage, then this is not permitted, right? So you just have to have like a basic understanding of what's permissible, what's not permissible, and it's fairly clear. Like, I mean, if you're dealing with a platform like, say, like FTX, which is basically like a central exchange that's mostly based on like contracts like CFDs and so on and so forth, then you want to avoid this because there's no actual possession of the assets. Or if you're taking a look at a platform like Aave, this is just a pure lending platform, and so it's not really permissible, right? But when you take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, and you take a look at Solana and all of these other types of projects, like the use case for them is very general, right? It's like when you're trying to invest in Google. Google is just like a search engine. You can't really control what people search for, but the essence of the search engine itself is permitted, right? So you just kind of have to analyze it in that respect. And then once you get past that level, you want to take a look deeper into the project with taking a look at the tokenomics. And usually these types of swaps and fee redistributions are for like BS projects or bogus projects just trying to stay afloat, right? Like once you purchase, they swap it for like BNB so that the bottom doesn't fall out, right? So this is like something that you always have to take into consideration when you're investing. So when you read a white paper and when you go through the project, you have to make sure that you have enough knowledge in order to purchase. And if you can make the determination of it being permissible or not permissible, which is fairly easy after reading a white paper, it's pretty clear. And as long as you have like some clarity on some certain issues, like let's take a look at Gala, for example. It's a gaming platform. Depending on what you feel about gaming and imagery and NFTs and so on and so forth, this will determine the permissibility of a coin like Gala, right? So it may be different for some people if their opinions on a certain matter from an Islamic perspective change.
Okay, and the metaverse?
Well, the metaverse, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like, I mean,
what's your opinion on halal, haram investment?
Yeah, like, I mean, the metaverse is just like another, like, vehicle like that is where, like the future is going to be, right? Like some people tell you that, the metaverse is haram because there's like casinos and stuff there. Well, I mean, like if you go to Vegas, you can go to casinos and they also have other things too. It doesn't make going to Vegas haram, right? So it's all about the use case at the end of the day. Is it beneficial for like the ummah in general, right? Like, I mean, you're not supposed to be putting your money in wasteful things, right? Like, I mean, that's why some people can make the argument that you shouldn't be buying NFTs, right? But at the end of the day, those are also digital assets. And the NFT itself is just literally a basket. Like it could be a JPEG, it could be audio, it could be a book, it could be pretty much anything. But at the end of the day, it all depends on like, are you really buying this because you're looking as an investment, or is it more of like, you're just wasting your money and you're just, throwing it away, trying to chase like these crazy returns that may never happen, right?
Yeah. So I think the point I wrote down here, just to bring it up again, is research and an investment thesis. Every time you mention something, it came with you mentioned the white paper and some research. And I think the listeners need to know you have to do research and have an investment thesis as number one. And number two, you have to think long-term when making any investment, if it's even buying Amazon stocks or Apple stocks. When you're thinking short-term, day-to-day, that's gambling, okay? And that's what I find a lot of youth entering the space, thinking they're going to come rich overnight, not doing research and not thinking long-term, right?
But you know what, like you can't really classify all short-term as gambling, right? Like if you do it with some sort of knowledge, then like if you're looking at charts, if you're like understanding the projects, if you set like, certain stop losses like for your risk management, then like there's nothing wrong with day trading or intraday trading or scalping or any of these types of you wouldn't really call it investing strategies. These are trading strategies, right? And as long as you're doing it with permissible assets, then trading isn't like, isn't haram.
Fair enough. Good point. Because
but people who are doing it like by like checking out like Elon's Twitter account, then those people are like more so.
I think that's what I meant. It's like people just reading a tweet and then putting money onto a certain share, like the likes of what happened in Robinhood and with GameStop and all these things. Okay.
The Reddit like pretty much revolution, right? So
the coin named what was it? Squid Games, and
it has nothing to do with the Squid Games.
Yeah, and then things just go to zero. But let's talk about your TikTok account. Give me the background and some history. I want you to share that journey with us.
So a couple of years ago, like when the pandemic was raging on, and I was just thinking of like, what to do with my free time. And for some reason, I was just like, you know what, let me give TikTok a try. Let me try making some videos. I was enjoying the platform because I think like in the early days, it was pretty decent. So I said,
I like how you say early days, like as if it's so old. It's 4 years old. It's 2 years. It's not even 2 years old.
Yeah. So it's I was always thinking like, I want to do something, but I didn't want to do like those like trendy videos. And a lot of people hate realtors on that platform, right? Like
Right.
I have like another account where I have like my real estate content, and
Yeah, I see
it's
that.
just like some of the feedback that you get is so bad. But I was thinking, you know what, I wanted to do something that was of benefit to people. I wanted to do something where like if I were to pass away, I wouldn't be like embarrassed when I go meet Allah one day. And I was thinking, because I had attended like these conferences regarding halal investing and so on and so
Yeah.
forth, that there isn't a lot of knowledge about it. Like even for me, like when I first started, like I was buying stuff that was haram, like because I had no idea. Like I never thought about it from the perspective that, if a company's in debt, or if it like has significant amount of debt,
Yeah.
even if it has a halal business, it would be impermissible to hold, right?
Right.
So I thought like, maybe educating people on what halal investing is, and especially when you have like a topic that's like, so centrally Islamic, on a platform like that, you can get the dichotomy of responses, whether, like, oh, wow, I never knew this, or you're a terrorist and you're going to go to hell, right? So, um, so that's why I kind of started. And like, for some reason, within like a week or so, like I had like my first video go viral, right? So
Was it the salam that made it viral, or what was it that made
no, actually, believe it or not, I didn't even start. The salam came like a little later on. Like this was just like it was funny. Like at first I had a shtick called like the halal police, right? Where I'd like mentioned something like halal, but so a lot of people say it's haram, and then I'll have like like police sirens and like lights go off, right? So as if like the haram police are showing up, right? But the salams came later on, like, and it was more because it was I was getting so worked up in the video. This was actually about like AMC, like when AMC and like all of these things were coming up, and they were just increasing, but AMC as a business is impermissible.
right?
So I tell people that AMC is haram, people are like, oh, you're just coming up with your own fatwas, right?
Yeah.
So I was just like, first of all, I'm not a sheikh, I'm not a scholar from an Islamic perspective, but it doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that this is a haram stock because
Yeah.
of 1, 2, 3. And after I presented my arguments, I was like, salams at the end, right? So, and then it just kind of stuck one way or the other.
It's very cool. I love it. My kids love it. My nephews love it. We all think there's so much energy that you transmit through the social media, and you know what? People love your personality. I must compliment you on that.
Jazakumullahu khairan.
So what was the first video that went viral, and how did that happen? And weren't you shocked? Like, I mean, when you started TikTok, you started with a
So
few
when I first started, I was just like, hi, I'm Nader, I'm the halal investor, and this is why you should not really listen to me. And I just went over my journey of like, how I got into it. Like, I went to a few conferences, I got certifications, and I was like, does this make me an expert? Absolutely not. But like, just follow along and maybe you'll learn something, right?
Yeah.
So the first video that actually went viral was like talking about what is a halal stock, or what makes a halal stock.
Right.
And all of a sudden, between like day and night, I had like 60,000 views on that one video.
Wow.
So this is like maybe the third video that I posted, right?
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, let me talk more about it and start explaining more, right? So, and then I started doing specific companies. Is this like stock halal, or is this stock halal, right? So, and it just started building. Like it wasn't like it took off between day and night where I had like thousands and thousands of followers. It took me like maybe 6 months to get around 5,000 followers. And then after that, it just kind of exploded once crypto came out, right? Or like once I started speaking about crypto as well. Like once I started speaking about crypto, I like grew my account to almost 30,000 followers, like within a span of a couple of months, right?
And
then it just
was it just more local, or just international, or just
the most, like if I look at my statistics, 12% of my followers are in Malaysia.
wow. Amazing.
Yeah, like I mean, like I have Malaysia is number one, the United Kingdom is number two, then I have the United States and Canada,
Yeah.
and then I have Singapore on there as well, and Indonesia. So those are the like the top like 5 countries that I have a following from.
I bet you never thought you got followers in South Africa.
You know what? Like, it's possible because again, TikTok is international, right? Like, there's no really borders, especially when you're talking about
That's it with social
something that's
media.
halal or haram. Like, you pretty much have like an open space because there's Muslims everywhere in this world.
Yes. Now, so let's go on to something else. When people talk about crypto or Bitcoin being halal and haram, some of the opinions are that the US dollar is soaked in riba.
So again, like you have to remember that like when you're talking about currency, like if you were to analyze every single currency like you would like cryptocurrency, they would all be haram because there's no like underlying asset, right?
Yes.
Especially the way that they control the monetary policy. But you see, the thing is, people don't buy like the US dollar to invest in it. They might use it like to stabilize their own currency, right? Like I mean, in Egypt right now, the floating Egyptian pound is like falling on a daily basis. So most people are trying to hold US dollars, and if you go to a local exchange or banks, it's almost impossible to get US dollars because people are just hoarding them, right?
Isn't this the same in many countries at the moment? I mean, besides Egypt.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I mean, like the governments are doing such a poor job with their own like currency that they're just treating it kind of like, hey, let's just print some more and see like what happens and give more people money or try to keep money while the currency is like above a certain level. Like if you go take a look at Venezuela, like they just had to remove 6 zeros from their currency just to make it like viable for everyone, right? So
have they not accepted, I mean, have they not let's say made Bitcoin a legal tender yet?
they haven't other like in other Latin countries they have, but in Venezuela it's still like more of a corrupt regime that's there, and there's kind of like a fight for power between two different parties, right? Like the US acknowledges like one side, but the people acknowledge someone else, and it's just very like sad like how some of these countries that especially with Venezuela, where it has like a large oil reserve, like more even larger than like Saudi and like most of the
one of
Middle
the
East,
largest oil reserves in the world,
but yet they're one of the poorest countries on the face of the earth, right? Like in terms of like how
their inflation rates over 470%.
yeah, it's crazy. Like it's not viable like when it comes to certain things like that. Like that's why most people actually just use the US dollar there as opposed to like using the local currency. But again, like when you take a look at it like from a halal or haram perspective, like there's certain things where like currency is whatever people are using that they give value to it, and if you can exchange it for other assets, then there isn't a problem with it. Like back in the day of the Prophet ﷺ, like you can use dates, you can use camels, you can use silver, you can use gold, like all of these like were forms of currency, right? Where you use it to exchange it for other goods, or you would use it to invest. Like when people would talk about someone's wealth, they'd look at like, oh, look at how many camels he has, right? So your camels are essentially like your Bitcoin stash one way or the other, right? So it's you just have to think of it from that perspective where like if you take a look at like the technicals behind any sort of currency, where like back in the day it used to be based upon gold, but now it's just based upon the Federal Reserve. So you want to make sure that you're using this currency for a purpose, or you're holding it for a purpose, and that's what would like make the case of it being halal or haram.
Yes. On that point about dates or anything being a currency, the one Like in prison. In prison, cigarettes are a currency.
Yep.
People would trade cigarettes for other stuff. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, this is great. Let's get to, you mentioned something about mining and, you know, if you were staking to do your own mining, something like that. Can you just take us back there?
Yeah, so when you stake, like staking is basically trying to solidify the blockchain, and the more the coins from a certain platform are staked, the more secure it becomes. Where you would have like more like keys on the chain for you to perform transactions on, or for you to verify like information on. So um the platform itself rewards you for having your keys locked up like on its platform, right? If you
Like
were to do this,
Bitcoin, or is that with some other coins?
so you can pretty much stake any sort of coin because of the way the blockchain works, right? So if I were like, think of it as putting like your money into a savings account, but it actually fulfills a purpose, right? So when you stake, like let's say like one of the more popular ones like Tezos or Cosmos or whatnot. So if you were to lock your crypto for like say a minimum 3 months, you would be able to get about a 10% return in terms of rewards for your ability to lock up the cryptocurrency. So what this does is that now with your keys locked up, more like verification can happen on the blocks that you own from the blockchain. If you haven't removed it from the blockchain or put it into a central exchange or put it into a wallet, so when you put it on a central exchange in order to stake it, most likely the exchange is using it in a pool of lending or margin trading or so on and so forth, and the rewards that you get are like interest based. But if you have it in your own personal wallet, like say, for example, Trust Wallet, you can stake it directly onto the platform's blockchain and get rewarded for it. So you're actually becoming your own node with regards to the staking of your coins, and then you get rewarded as such.
Right. I'm going to ask the question again. But is that possible with Bitcoin?
With Bitcoin, you can stake Bitcoin, but like there are minimum standards when it comes to staking. So for you to, in order to stake a coin, you have to have 100 of a coin.
Oh.
So if you have 100 Bitcoin, then you can stake them, right? But who has 100 Bitcoins, right? So that's why like a lot of people do it on exchanges, because the exchange can collectively collect as many Bitcoins as possible and they can stake it on your behalf. But when you're getting a portion of the reward, you don't know if the reward is exclusively coming from the staking rewards or if it's a combination of staking rewards and interest, right?
Okay. Is that, so people that say, I haven't researched into mining, okay? Mining Bitcoin. Is that a whole different topic now? Mining Bitcoin. Yeah. And because you can earn revenue from mining Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on that? Do you know, are you doing that? Do you know people doing mining Bitcoin? Is it a good investment to buy into a pool? Like there's these companies called Compass Mining, where you can buy a ant miner and put it in their warehouse in somewhere in Poland or Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Or somewhere.
Unless you're doing it on a large scale, it's not really that that advantageous in terms of making a return on your investment. Like you'd be better off investing directly into Bitcoin, unless you have like hundreds of thousands of dollars to set up like a mining like rig, and you have to make sure that electricity is cheap, and you have to make sure that the temperature of the region is actually very cool. That's why a lot of miners are like in Canada and Sweden and Ireland and in places where it's really cold, right? Or in China where the electricity is cheap, right? Yes. Obviously they outlawed like mining in China, right? But at the end of the day, like mining itself, like unless you're doing it on a large scale, won't be beneficial to you, because you always have to take a look at what the cost of production is, right? Like I was reading that the cost of producing one Bitcoin costs around $13,000.
Yeah.
And with the price of Bitcoin right now being at around 20,000, you can still make some money off of it, right?
Right.
But the hardware or your ability to get in, especially with the lack of supply of the chips in the supply chain, it's
Yes.
very difficult to set up a rig for anything less than like say like maybe $100,000 just to get you started, right? So in that sense, like you'd be better off taking that same 100,000 and putting it into Bitcoin and waiting on that, and you'll probably have a better return on your investment than, you know, generating like something that will like mine Bitcoin. But I mean, if you have like, you know, like 3, 4, 500,000 to spare, and you want to set up a mining rig and get a place and get all the hardware for it, like I mean, you could be easily like, you know, like making like anywhere from like 50 to 100,000 a year, like just from like this kind of like mining setup, right? And as soon as like the price of Bitcoin increases, you'll be making way more money, right? So essentially, like the more Bitcoin you produce, the more it'll become valuable.
Yeah.
Especially like when Bitcoin is going to get halved in 2024, it'll be much harder to mine Bitcoin.
Yes,
so
the reward will drop. And what are we scheduled? Do you think it's around May 2024?
I think it was, they mentioned it's in 2024. I'm not sure exactly what like month, but at that time, like you're essentially like making it harder to produce like more Bitcoin. So the price of Bitcoin is eventually going to go up.
I think it's more about at a certain block number, like, you know, at a certain mark of a block number, then it happens. But I think it's scheduled more or less around May 2024. Yeah. So yeah, I think mining to me is quite interesting to learn about. I don't know enough. I need to bring more people onto the podcast, interview them about it. But the one company I've been in touch with is Compass Mining, and what they do is pool. People buy mines and then they put it in one warehouse, like, you know, a few 100,000 of these miners, and they had things based in Poland and Kazakhstan and all these coal regions, or where there's cheap electricity, as you're saying. But this space, it's quite huge. There's you're always learning. It's fascinating. It's you never feel you know enough. You're always going down this rabbit hole, as they say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the rest of your family or friends, have they understood it? How did you find the challenge to like explain to them, you know?
Well, as far as, you know, the sales pitch to the family, I try to avoid that, especially like with what happened with Luna. Like I definitely want to stay away from it. Like I don't want to be the one where, you know, they label you as like, hey, look, it's the investor coming to dinner. So I mean, like if people know that like I am like investing in stuff, they'll ask a few questions here and there and I'll answer those questions, but it's not like I'm walking around like as a walking sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
I actually get more interest or more questions from like strangers, or when I go to the masjid, they're like, hey, you're that halal stock guy, can I like ask you a few questions? And then you know, that's usually like what happens, like in terms of like, you know, speaking to people and stuff. But for me, like if people don't really understand it, I'm not gonna like push them to go like invest into something that they don't understand, because at the end of the day, like everybody has their own beliefs and their own understanding of certain products. Just like how if you were to talk to me about crypto and investing 5 years ago, I'd be like, you're crazy, man, there's no way, absolutely not. Right? But it's just that some people actually have to take the time and look into something before they can make their judgment about it.
Right. What's your opinion on adoption, and where do you see it? You know, like we're in 2022 now. Do you think there would be what they call Bitcoin hyphenization? Okay. Do you think there's a time like how your TikTok account, you know, there's a slow growth at first to 5,000, and then probably from 40 to 60 happened very quickly, right? What's your opinion on Bitcoin and the crypto market like accelerating?
I think it needs like patience, because as of right now, like with what's happening in globally, you could see that cryptocurrency was affected by the economic landscape, right? Like to a certain extent, we were tracking the crypto markets with the performance of like the American stock markets. In fact, it was almost like an 80%
correlation between the NASDAQ.
exactly. So I mean, as of late, that's not really the case. Like it's more like been decoupled for like the last couple of weeks. But I feel that, you know, it does have more of a correlation than people would like to admit. Like cryptocurrency isn't seen as an inflation hedge anymore, but
Yeah.
it's seen as a risky asset, and it will react like a risky asset. So when interest rates are high, money is flowing into cash, and when interest rates are low, they're like going into riskier assets, right? Because at that point, it becomes um, more lucrative in order to invest in riskier assets than it does for like, you know, a safe return of like say 2% in the bond markets, right? So yeah, like I do feel that once the economy is back into place, because like you said, like there's cycles to all these markets, right? And it's normal to in a person's lifetime to see at least 2 or 3 recessions, right? So I mean, this is just maybe like the first for a lot of people, but once we're out of this recession, like recessions actually make more millionaires than they do like people who are like broke, right? Because if you manage your money correctly, if you save it and you've invested in the right places, you'll end up making more money over the longer term than somebody who decided to like, you know, keep their money out of the market or keep their money like in a savings account where it's losing money every year because of inflation.
Yeah. Uh, the next question I have for you is, who were you following on social media or learning from, or you find inspirational when it comes to your knowledge or content?
So I follow a lot of people, right? Like not necessarily for like, you know, Islamic content, like from that kind of perspective, because that the people that I use as research, like they don't have like a social media like platform, right? But when it comes to like say investing, like I first like learned a lot about like, you know, stocks from the Islamic Finance Guru. Like their platform is amazing.
Well, what's
The
just repeat it again? I'm just from where
Islamic Finance Guru. Like they're a UK based
the website.
they're a UK based blog, but they have scholars that are like, you know, under their control, and like the two guys that started it, like they've been educated in Islamic finance, and one of them was a previous lawyer, and it's just like the platform is very well put together, and the opinions that they have, like for the most part, I agree with most of them, right?
Yeah.
Then when it comes to like, you know, investing, I started watching um there was a guy named Austin Hankwitz. Like he was one of like the earlier like TikTokers from with regards to like investing in the stock market.
Okay.
Robert Ross was another one. Like
Okay.
there's a lot of people that I learned a lot of stuff from. There's an Egyptian guy who did I forget what his name is, but he did a lot of technical analysis. So I learned a lot of like what to look for from
Yeah.
like their videos, you know. So it's
So you
more of
did a lot of learning on your own. Like, I mean,
yeah,
you know, on technical analysis, I found that's totally opposite of fundamental analysis.
exactly. Like I mean, when you take a look at fundamentals, is not the same when you look at technicals, and this like differentiates between when to like, you know, when you're investing and when you're trading.
Yeah.
But like learning these technicals will help you make better buying decisions for long-term growth. So like right now, like while the markets are kind of in a bear market, you're kind of waiting for the bottom to fall out so that you can start putting your money back into it. And that's kind of like where we are right now with crypto as well. It's like mostly like, I mean, it would be good over the long term, like say in 5 years, if you were to buy Bitcoin today, but all signs point to it going lower
Yeah.
and it going much lower than where it is right now,
Yes.
just based on technicals.
Yes.
And you would probably be better off to buy at that time
Yeah.
where it does go down. And it's not like you can predict the bottom, but you can start buying at certain levels. Like say if it goes to 17,000, I'll buy like more. And if it goes to 15,000, then I'll buy more. And if it goes to like 10,000, then I'll buy a lot more, right? So
Yeah.
like as
That's
opposed to
risk
buying,
management also.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, you have to have like certain levels for yourself. And then when you start seeing that, like, you know, we've reversed from like the bear market and starting a bullish run, then you could start investing your money and getting ready for that run, right?
But what you're just mentioning to us, right? When did you learn all this? In the last 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, like I mean, like maybe the last like 3 years, like just like trying to get into it. But I feel like when you start to learn about a subject, you have to like kind of embody your entire day with that kind of subject. So for me, I was watching like
I get you.
I was watching like, you know, I was reading every single article with regards to like say market financials. I was watching as many YouTube videos as I can. Like my entire day was basically around, you know, like whatever it is as an investor, plus I'm in real estate, and at the same time you're trying to be a better Muslim one way or the other. So it all kind of like came together for me at that time. And before that, all I was doing was just like, you know, wasting my time watching sports.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean, it's a wake-up call for sure.
yeah. But I can see you enjoy it, and I know when you get bitten by the bug, it's similar. I mean, I could stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, listening to this podcast and watching this, and you land up checking the charts at 2 a.m. because it opens up in America in our 2 a.m. and there's a 6-hour difference. So, and people are like, what the hell are you up at 2 a.m. Posting a true story? And you're like, no, it's exciting. There's a shift in the market. There's something happening. But it's a very exciting time. I know we're in a bear market. I know we haven't seen the bottom. I'm also waiting. I don't know whether it's going to happen in August or whether it's going to happen in November. But I've got, you know, a lot in the pipeline backing on this industry. So I've got an advisory company, which I'm working on. We've got an app that helps filter the 19,500 cryptos that are on CoinMarketCap, right? I mean, when I entered the market, there was 6,000 cryptos on CoinMarketCap's website. Today, there's like about 20,000. So we trying to get a software that we're developing. It's in testing phase that you know, like how you move sliders in booking.com, and it just filters it and tells you what's limited, what's not limited, what's got fast transaction speeds on it, what's got traffic on the network. So there's a few things in the pipeline, and then we've affiliated with Trezor, Ledger, Coldcard. So if people want to buy hard wallets, they can buy it on our website. And hopefully, you know, these businesses grow in the next 4 to 8 years.
I hope so. I hope so.
But all the best, and we will definitely meet up again on a podcast and stay in touch. And it was lovely to have you on the show, and hope the listeners give us feedback and comments. And I want all the listeners to follow you on your TikTok and your Instagram. I'm going to put a link to all your channels below when we post this.
Jazakumullah khair. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. Let me bye. I'll just pause this.